thought about how good we have it? Like, you just spend any time thinking about how good we have it? I know we talk about our problems a lot, but how good we have it. So, we talk about the air conditioning, and it's too cold, or it's too hot. Our air conditioner was out a couple weeks ago, and it's like, oh, Lord, why are you doing this to us? And meanwhile, there are people around the world that would really like an electric fan and a mosquito net, right? And we just have it really good. We argue on the internet about the freedom of speech and what is a violation of freedom of speech and what's not a violation of freedom of speech, and yet we live in a very small percentage of time where the concept of freedom of speech even exists to argue about. That's a pretty big deal. Get upset when the Wi-Fi lags. Oh, I get upset. Got to go restart the router and call Cox and be like, look now, we got to have the internet. I'm supposed to do anything without the internet. And there are people all over the world right now that if they had access to the internet, wouldn't be able to use it because they can't read, right? That's how good we have it. And that's just being a human. You just talk about Christianity and being a follower of Jesus at this point. We struggle to find time to spend time with God today. Like, it's really hard for me to find time to spend in the Bible. I meant to, and I forgot to, and I didn't get around to it, and I got busy and went to sleep. Meanwhile, there are believers in China that when they're able to get a Bible smuggled in, they memorize it as quickly as possible because they know they're going to get arrested and it's going to be confiscated, and they want to have it memorized so that when it's taken away, they can still know what God has to say. I've got a friend that's a missionary in Kenya, and what he does is he trains Kenyan pastors, so it's not this white guy showing up and starting churches, but he trains Kenyan pastors, and they go and start churches and do those things. And when they're ready to build a building, they go to the village elders and they buy a piece of land, and then they pour some concrete and throw up some posts and put metal siding on it. And then they get lawn chairs. You know those really uncomfortable ones that stack and they're the weird curves? And that's what they've got. Meanwhile, we're going to decide which room of our building we're going to use. And that's just like the comfort things. We talk about how difficult it can be to be a believer in America in 2025, and that's really compared to like what it was like in 1990 or what was it like in 1950. But in the 20th century alone, there have been somewhere around 20 million believers in Jesus killed because they believed in Jesus. Just in the 20th century. That's not other places. The USSR killed, I think it was 15 million. And that's not just going, just the general oppressive. That's you're going to be executed or you're going to a gulag. And you're going to die in a gulag. Turkey killed 1.5 million believers in Armenia in like the 1910s to 1920 for being Armenian believers. Uganda under Idi Amin killed 300,000 believers. And some of that was just killing, and some of it was being sold into slavery for being believers. I didn't realize this, but I was looking up stats, and there were a few thousand believers, and these were mostly Catholic believers that were killed. They weren't necessarily our stripe, but they were still killed because they believed in Jesus. In Mexico, they killed somewhere around 3,000 priests, nuns, monks, because they would not step away from that. It was early in the 20th century. That's early in the 20th century, and we think, oh, that's all done, but then you go to Sudan, right, where it's still pretty ongoing. Vietnam, this is a weird one I didn't know about. In Vietnam, in 2024, they passed a law to make it easier to persecute Christians. It's Vietnam. It's not like a Muslim majority country. Afghanistan right now, if you convert to Christianity, it's an immediate death sentence if you get caught. Immediate death sentence. No questions. And being a believer in Northwest Arkansas in 2025 does have its difficulties. There are things about life that is just harder, like you're in a work workplace that's getting more and more anti-Christian, and it's getting harder. You got some relationships where the way that culture is shifting, you're seen as a bigot because of what you believe, and that's definitely true. I don't want to say that that's not true. But what I will contend is that there are very few people, not Christians, people in the world alive or who have ever lived that would not trade places with you if given the opportunity. In a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. And if you were just talking about Christians and you say to Christians throughout history, would you rather be dealing with what you're dealing with or live in Northwest Arkansas in 2025? In a heartbeat, they choose this. It is definitely a struggle at times and in ways. Not saying it's not. But when you compare what everybody else has had to deal with what we have to deal with, we are blessed. Very blessed. And blessings carry responsibility. Blessings require us to step up to another level of responsibility. And you know this, right? What do you expect of the rich guy? You expect him to be very generous, right? He's got money. You expect him to be very, very generous with his money. It's just what you expect. Anybody that's blessed with something more than what somebody has, you expect them to enjoy it and share it. I don't get mad at billionaires for having multiple planes. Well, you got the opportunity to do that. You should enjoy that. I would want to do that. I want you to enjoy what you have. And when we look at history and believers throughout history that look at us and the privileges that we have, I have a feeling they would be disappointed. Because we're so obsessed with the minimal struggles that we have that we're doing far less than they did. We're in 1 Peter, and in 1 Peter, he is writing to a group of people that's in a very similar situation to us. They're believers in Turkey. They're coming out of Judaism, or they didn't really want to, but they kind of got kicked out of Judaism, or they're coming out of some pagan background, and they're losing their culture. They're losing their families in a lot of cases. There's a lot of divorces that go along with this when they convert to Christianity, and they're losing their livelihoods. They're losing their jobs. It's not government oppression yet. That's another 5 or 10 years down the road, but it's just general oppression and what you're walking away from to be a believer. And he has spent what we've looked at for the last couple of weeks. He started off just by reminding them what they have. And then he tried to shift their perspective and help them to understand, like, yes, you're dealing with a struggle, but here's what you do have. Here's what God's doing. Here's how God is working through all that. And where we are today, he's going to stop with a pity party and move into the reality of their situation. And so that's what we're going to jump into and see how this applies to us. In 1 Peter chapter 1. There's not an 8th chapter of 1 Peter, so if you go look in there, you will be lost. 1 Peter chapter 1, starting in verse 8, it says, though you have not seen him, you love him. Though you do not know him, you do not now see him, you believe in him and rejoice with a joy that is inexpressible and filled with glory. I think about the song we sing, joy unspeakable and filled with glory, but inexpressible. That is also an accurate translation. And filled with glory, obtaining the outcome of your faith, the salvation of your souls. Peter starts in and talks about what they have. He says, you haven't seen Jesus, and you still don't see Jesus. And yet, you have managed to arrive at the truth anyhow. That God has done whatever is necessary to get you to the point to believe in spite of not seeing and not knowing what's going on. And this is a big deal, right? It's a big deal because they've gotten to do this, but it's an especially big deal if you think back to some of the conversations that Jesus had with the disciples, right? They said, I won't believe unless I get to see him. I won't believe unless I get to touch him. I won't believe unless I get to do this. And Jesus said, you're blessed because you believe when you see. But those that believe without seeing are far more blessed because their faith is entirely faith and not based on evidence. And he said, you have a blessing that I don't have. right? Who is it that's more blessed? The apostle who got to spend 1.5, 2 years with Jesus and got to see him, got to spend time with him for 2.5 years, and then spends the rest of his life serving, or the person who never sees Jesus and yet believes anyway and receives a reward from God for their willingness to believe in spite of not being able to see him. Well, you might say, well, the apostle's more blessed because he got to hang out with Jesus. He got to spend time with Jesus. He got to eat a meal with Jesus. But Jesus said, no, that's not how it is. Most people throughout history have not been with Jesus. It's just true. Most people have not been with Jesus. But there are believers before Jesus who didn't understand what they believed, but they just believed and trusted. They didn't understand it. They didn't have all the answers, but they trusted. And then you got the small sliver of people right there. It's so small I can't make my hands that close together. You got the small sliver of people who saw Jesus and were with Jesus and interacted with Jesus. And they believed because of that. But then you've got the people from here on who believe without seeing. And that's the churches in Turkey, and that's us. And Jesus said, it is better for you personally for you to believe without seeing than it is for me, who saw and believed because I saw. And you think about Peter, all the things that he saw and still struggled, right? All the things that he saw and still struggled. And he says, I am somewhat envious of you because you will spend eternity with Jesus being blessed more than me. Because I believe, because I saw. And he said, you've been given this gift of faith without having to see Jesus, without having to touch the nail scars in his hands. You've been given this gift, and you may not realize it's a gift, but it is a gift because there's a greater reward for that kind of faith. You have not seen him, but you love him anyway. I love him. Of course I love him. I saw him. I hung out with him. Did this whole thing. We had meals together. We did this thing. And so I love him. It makes sense that I love him, says Peter, not me. He says, I saw those things, but you have been given this gift of faith without being with him. And what's really cool is he says this thing about you believe in him and you rejoice with joy that is inexpressible and filled with glory. This goes back to when Paul talked in Colossians about that you have this peace that's beyond understanding, this peace of Christ that comes beyond understanding that comes from Jesus. He says this is not a thing that you just work yourself up to. It's not a thing that's just a part of who you are, but it's a gift directly from God as a reward for what's going on. And he says, you are rejoicing in the midst of this suffering. You are excited in the midst of this suffering. You have this gift in the midst of suffering. And it's not because you're just cool people who think happy thoughts. But God himself is injecting this into you as a reward and as a help. As you believe without having seen him. And that you obtain the outcome of your faith. The salvation of your souls, that you, despite the circumstances, despite not seeing him, you have recognized your sinful condition, that you are sinners bound for hell because the wages of sin is death. But what Jesus has done is given you the opportunity to share in his death so that you receive the punishment for your sins. You're still guilty, but Jesus takes the punishment. And not only that, but he raises you from the dead. And all of this comes when you recognize your need for salvation, you recognize that he is the only Son of God and the only one that can provide that, and you call out to him, he gives you the thing that you need, which is the salvation of your souls. Think about where you are. Think about what that means. Think about the privilege that you have there. And I know it's hard and I know it's a struggle, but think about what you have. In verse 10, he says this, concerning this salvation, this thing that you have, the prophets who prophesied about the grace that was to be yours searched and inquired carefully, inquiring what person or time the Spirit of Christ in them was indicating when he predicted the sufferings of Christ and the subsequent glories. These people that you think are blessed because they were prophets, they look at you and are jealous because they wanted to know what they were prophesying about. They wanted to understand what they were prophesying about, and God said, it's not for you. Just go say what I have to say and trust me. And there are going to be other people that get to understand what you're saying. But it's not going to be you. You'll remember back before Google, We'd sit around the table and have conversations, and we would say, what do you think this is? Or where does this come from? Or why does this work this way? And everybody just give their best guess, and then you move on, not knowing the answer. Like we go on a cruise, and I turn my phone off. Britt will get the internet package so she can talk to the kids, and I intentionally don't check my phone. And the thing that I want to do most all week is Google stuff, right? That's what I want to do. I want to know the answers to stuff. Like, there was a moment I was like, I'm standing there looking at this water, I'm like, how deep is this? I need to know how deep this is. No idea. It's deep. That's all I got. Do blue whales live in the Gulf of Mexico or America, depending on your political slant? Do blue whales live here? I don't know. Guess I'll have to look and see if I can see one. I have all these questions that I cannot answer, and that drives me a little bit bonkers. But Peter says to these guys, like, there are people throughout history who have longed to understand what you know, and they're not going to get to know. They wanted to know. They're prophesying about this Messiah, and they want to know who it is, and God says, it's not for you. They want to know when it is, and God says, that's not for you. They want to understand how salvation works and how this rescue from sin works, and God says, that's not for you. But to us, it has been revealed. To us and to them. It was revealed. See, Tori thought I was doing this really cool thing where I was actually reading into what the next verse says, and God just did that. I didn't know. She was ready to go on that next one. It was revealed, almost as if I planned that transition. It was revealed to them that they were serving not themselves, but you. In the things that have now been announced to you through those who preach the good news to you by the Holy Spirit sent from heaven, things into which angels long to look, that angels themselves are like, God, will you explain this to us? And he says, no. Like, no, I'm not going to explain it to you. This is really cool. This is really secret. This is my plan. I want to roll it out so that you understand it as go. And they're like, will you please tell us? And he says, no. The prophets say, will you please tell us what this is? And he says, no. The only thing that's revealed to them are the specific things for them to say and the answer that this is for somebody else. It's for us, right? It's like planting the tree. You plant the tree for somebody else. You don't plant it for yourself. You plant the tree and you water the tree and you take care of the tree, and somebody else is going to sit under the shade, and all you get to do is pay the cost of the tree. And it was said to the prophets, and it's said to the angels, it's not for you. And despite your struggle, the rest of believers, the rest of people that trust in God, the rest of the ones that look at this are jealous of you. Because you get to understand things they don't. And you think about that, like for these believers in Turkey who had exactly one book of the Bible, and they got it in the mail when Peter wrote this letter, right? They have exactly one book of the New Testament. They have the Old Testament. They've got exactly one book of this. They don't have 2,000 years of developed theology to articulate the Trinity and to understand like the differences between Calvinism and Arminianism and what the stuff is in the middle. And they don't have all these years of theologians writing and helping people understand and working through these things to understand stuff. They don't have that. They don't have multiple translations of the Bible in their own language so that they can look at that and see what this stuff is and what this isn't. And Peter says, y'all are blessed. Why? Because they understand the gospel. How much more so are we compared to them? When we have all that we have. You can go back 20 years and it's significantly harder for you to understand the Bible than it is right now. Back before, I remember my grandpa was a pastor, and he had all these books. And if he wanted to know the answer to something, he would have to buy a book. And he'd have to read the whole book to find the answer. And then he'd highlight it. And then if he wanted to find the answer again, he'd have to go find that book and flip through it to find the answer. And it cost money and it cost work. And the regular believer, it was just hard. It was hard. Maybe you have a concordance. Maybe you have a Bible dictionary that you can look at this and figure it out. But you got one translation and you got maybe one book, and you have to trust the preacher for the rest. It's just the way it was because it's expensive and it's difficult. But now you can fact check me during the sermon. You can Google and have access to free resources, the same resources that I have at the tip of your finger. Using church Wi-Fi, you can do that in a way that even 20 years ago was not possible. And Peter says, these guys are privileged. These guys are blessed. All of the believers before this point are jealous of them just because they understand the gospel and know who Jesus is. How much more so are we blessed? And how much more responsibility do we have? And Peter says, now that I've laid out how blessed you are, and we've gone through your struggles, let's get serious about this thing. Verse 13. He says, therefore, that means, given everything else we've just said, prepare your minds for action. I talk about Bible translations. I'm not a King James guy. I don't do the King James. That's fine. Do whatever you want to. I'm not that. But this is the one time that I really like the way the King James translates, because it translates it literally, okay? The way that the King James translates this is like, how do we express the idiom that's there? And the King James is like, no, just here's the idiom. The phrase that's used here, preparing your minds for action, is gird up the loins of your mind. Gird up the loins of your mind. My brother says, gird up your loins all the time. Like storms coming through. Gird up your loins. It's time to get to work. Pay attention to what's going on. This gird up your loins thing, what it comes from is the men would wear these, it's not a skirt, but it's like a skirt. It's like a dress. And they would wear these things. And when it was time to fight, or it's time to, you would take this thing and you would pull it up and you would tie it and pull it tight right in this area. You would do that so your legs are free to move, so you can run, so you can fight. You're not tripping on your skirt. That's what it's for. You do that when you're ready to get ready to fight. Do that when you're ready to get to work. Somebody that's not got their loins girded up isn't serious. They're not ready for business time. There's somebody that's going to sit around and talk all day. But somebody that girds up, they're ready to get to work. They're ready to accomplish something. Gird up. We would say saddle up, right? We'll get some of that American mythology in there. We're going to saddle up. We're going to be ready to go. He said, gird up the loins of your minds. Prepare your minds for action. Okay, you're blessed. You've got all this stuff. There is responsibility to that. Get ready to get something done. Stop the pity party and let's get to work. Gird up the loins of your mind. Gird up is going to be my new phrase. It's just going to be what I say from now on. Be sober-minded. This is not about drugs and it's not about alcohol. What this is, it's about you getting serious. Don't get distracted. Don't allow anything else to come in and shift your focus. If you've received all these blessings, get ready to work, get your mind straight, so that you're able to think clearly, not getting distracted by all the struggle, not getting distracted by all the things that are going around you, but instead by being focused on what's going on. And set your hope fully on the grace that will be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. This word grace, one of my favorite words, talk about it all the time. My goal is to repeat things so much that you just know what it is already, and somebody asks about it, and my words come out of your mouth, and you're horrified that I'm speaking through you. So, the word grace is undeserved favor. It means that you get something you don't deserve. And it's cool because he talked last week about mercy, right? Mercy is not getting what you do deserve, so he wanted our focus to be on us and what we deserve. And this week its focus is on God and what God has done for us. That we set our hope fully on the grace that will be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. That our full hope, our full reliance is not on our abilities, it's not on our value, it's not on our talents, but it's entirely on him. He says, you have received these blessings. So gird up, get your mind right, and trust in Jesus for this thing. Not just for your salvation, but fully put your hope in every area. In your marriage, put your hope in Jesus. In your work, put your hope in Jesus. That means obeying Jesus in that situation and trusting him to work out the details. Obey him in that situation and rely on his grace to carry you through. So, gird up. Then we get into verse 14. As obedient children, do not be conformed to the passions of your former ignorance, but as he who called you is holy, you also be holy in all your conduct. As it is written, you shall be holy, for I am holy. Here's a problem. We get all these attachments to these words and we don't know what they mean. The word holy, when we think about the word holy, we're like, oh, that's what holy means. That's not what holy means. Holy means set apart for a specific purpose. That God is holy because he is set apart from us. He is set apart for a specific purpose from us. He is different from us. It's not that he glows, okay? It's that he is set apart. And this is what Peter says. He says, you who are relying fully on your hope of grace, you are children of your Father, so act like your Father. He is set apart for his own purposes. He doesn't get distracted by what's going on right here in front of him. He is set apart for his specific purposes. So you, as children who are obedient, not just who are like your Father because you're his children, but because you obey him, because you love him, because you serve him, because you're in the family business. You who are obedient, you be set apart too. Don't be conformed. Don't be like everybody else to the passions of your former ignorance, getting caught up in what's going on here, what's going on there, and the drama of the world. Cooper is in this little friend group, and I thought drama is all supposed to be for girls. Apparently not. And there was some drama this week. And it's these two guys, and they're just like, one of them is the show love by insulting kind, but he doesn't know how to regulate that. So, when people are about to punch you, you got to pull back a little bit. He doesn't understand that yet. And the other one is on the receiving end of that, and he was like, hey, that's enough. And then Cooper jumped in the middle for some reason, and he's there, and he's with grandparents right now. So we get this phone call from one of the moms and one of the boys, and she says, can you have Cooper talk to this guy so that this guy can apologize? And we didn't know anything about all this drama, which I'm grateful for. So we call Cooper, and I'm like, hey, what is happening? He said, well, this happened, and and the advice was this: stay out of it. Stay out of the drama. Don't let yourself get pulled into the drama of the people around you. You stay focused on what you need to do. You make sure you're doing right in your situation. Don't get sucked into the drama, and that is Peter's advice here. Don't be conformed to the passions of your former ignorance. Don't get sucked into the drama of this world. You have a more important task. You are children of the King. You're part of the family business. Don't get sucked into the drama. Rely fully on Jesus. Trust him in the circumstance, and don't get sucked into the drama. Be set apart for a specific purpose, as your Father in heaven is. And then in verse 17, he says this: and if you call on him as Father who judges impartially, according to each one's deeds, conduct yourselves with fear throughout the time of your exile. Right? This is a reminder back to what we talked about a couple of weeks ago about those Babylonian exiles, the Jews who were carried off all over the world. And he says, remember that God has brought you here for a specific purpose, and you're in this time and you're in this place for such a time as this. So you're there. And what's happening is you're there and you're struggling because you're there, and you don't like it because you're there, and you want to be somewhere else. You want to be somewhere else. You want to be at a different time. And you're calling out to God and you're saying, God, why me? God, why are you doing this to me? Why are you allowing this to happen to me? He said, if you're going to call out to him, you got to remember who you're talking to. You got to remember who you're talking to. He is the one that judges your deeds. He is the one that determines impartially your conduct, that looks at it and judges it. So if you're going to go to him and say, why me? You need to remember what he's already given you, what he's already done for you. Because he's not going to sit there and take the blame for all the blessings that he's given you when you're using them to throw rocks at him about what he's put you through. Remember who your Father is. And if you're going to cry out to him for help, you got to remember what you're getting. The kids decide who they're going to ask for help based on the kind of reaction that they want from us, right? If you have a big problem and you need somebody to step in and pick something heavy up or solve a big problem or something like that, you're probably going to come to me. That's the way it's going to work. Because what's Britt going to do? If you go to her with a problem like that, she's going to come to me anyway, so you skip a step, you go to that. But if you want somebody to be comforting and gentle and kind and nice, you go to mom, right? That's just how it's going to work out. She's going to be a lot better. My immediate answer to everything that you ask is no. No. Can we do this? No. I didn't even hear what you said. No, you can't do that. She's going to be more comforting, and you got to remember who it is that you're asking for help. He is gracious and he is kind, but don't show up griping about the situation he's put you in when the situation you're in is better than almost anybody else has ever been given. Get your head on straight, guys. I know it's tough. I know work is weird. I know that you've got to balance following Jesus and keeping your job, and you're trying to figure out what that looks like. And I know that family member makes things weird at holidays, and I know this is hard, and this is hard, and this is hard. But don't go griping to him about what he has not done for you when he has done more for you than almost anybody else. Remember who you're talking to. In verse 18, he finishes up and he says, knowing that you were ransomed from futile ways. What has he done for you? He has bought you out of a life that was bound for hell. He has bought you out of that. And not with money. He has ransomed you from the futile ways inherited from your forefathers. Not with money, not with perishable things, not with property, such as silver or gold, but with the precious blood of Jesus, like that of a lamb without blemish or spot. Remember, the one that you're complaining to and upset with about what he's done to you or what he's done for you is the one that used his own son's life to rescue you. And I get that it's hard, and I get that there's a struggle, but get some perspective before you start griping at God. We are blessed beyond measure. And every believer can say that throughout history, not just right now, but every believer throughout history can say that they're blessed beyond measure because of the grace that's been given to us that we don't deserve. Every believer can say that, but on this giant pile of grace, ours is just a little bit higher. And I wonder what it's going to be like. You know, I just imagine these conversations, we get to heaven, and we're talking to believers who've died throughout the centuries, and we're just meeting and having small talk. And we say, how did you die? How did you end up here? So, well, I refused to recant, and so I was sawn in half. And you go to the next person, you say, well, how did you get here? And he said, well, I wasn't sawn in half, but I refused to recant, and my wife left me, and my kids left me. They didn't want anything to do with it. And my business dried up, and I died in poverty. I got sick because I lost my house, I lost my kids, I lost my job, and I'm just kind of living out in this place, and there's no running water, and it's drafty, and I got sick and didn't have any money, and I died because of my faith. I was like, oh, okay. And then you get to us, and you say, how did you get here? I'm like, well, it wasn't sawn in half, and there were some drafts in some of my windows because they were kind of old. But I really struggled with how to share my faith at work without being called to HR. And so I prayed about it a lot, and then I didn't do it at all. And then when I was 85, I died in my bed with all my family around me in a really comfortable place. And I wonder what those conversations are going to be like. Not that there's anything wrong with dying at 85 in a comfortable bed, but when we get to heaven and start comparing stories with believers, these complaints that we have are going to seem kind of small. So, given what we've received and the fact that blessings require responsibility, gird up. Get serious. Yes, it's hard. Life is hard. Gird up. Get ready for work. Because you've been blessed so that you can bless. You've been blessed for responsibility. You've not been saved to sit. You've been saved to serve. Gird up. Get up and get ready to work. Guys, there's work to be done here. Let's just start here. There is work that needs to be done here. We've got kids that we've been entrusted with, and it is our job to assist parents in bringing them to know Jesus. We've got people here that want to disciple you, that want to help you grow better, and you're refusing to take that step to move forward. It's time for you to gird up and get involved in that. We've got things that are going on around here. Our opportunities to reach in the community just within our church are here, and they're ready to go, and the only reason we can't do them is because people are more concerned about all the other crap. Sorry, shouldn't have said that. Somebody will get upset about it. All the other stuff, I'm excited about this. All the other stuff, things that people are working on in their lives and focused on in their lives, and so we're not doing what we need to do in the community because we're too busy to gird up. We are blessed. That requires a responsibility. Gird up. Let's get to work. Lock in, guys. Stop getting distracted by all the other things that are going on. I know there's other stuff going on. Get it done and move forward. We have a job to do. We have a mission to do here. We work for the Son of God who has been sent to rescue the world. We've been given the ministry of reconciliation. Lock in to this. Don't get distracted by all this other stuff. Stay out of the drama and lock into the mission that God has for you. You are an ambassador of Christ wherever you go. In your work, in your home, in your neighborhood, you are an ambassador for God. And your job there is to cry out on behalf of God, come back to God. This is the most important mission you could be given. And you're getting distracted. Don't get distracted. Stay focused. And remember who you belong to. I understand being upset. I get upset. I get frustrated with God. I say, God, why me? And why is this happening? Why is this going on? And He is patient. He is kind. He does not slap me over the head as much and as often as I need to be. But He is still the God who ransomed us with the life of His Son. And before you start complaining about how hard your life is and how much He's not done for you, remember who He is and what He has done. Remember. First, Peter wraps up in verses 20 and 21. He says this: He was foreknown before the foundation of the world, but was made manifest in the last times for the sake of you. He was talked about, He was prophesied about, He was looked for all these centuries. But you, few, are the ones who receive the privilege of seeing and understanding. All of this was done for us, who through Him are believers in God, who raised Him from the dead and gave Him glory, so that your faith and your hope are in God. We have been blessed. Blessings require responsibility. You were not saved to show up to church and sit. You were saved to gird up and get to work. I get that it's hard. I get that it's a struggle. I get that you've got stuff going on. But if we compare our lives to everyone else's, we're at the top of the heap. And as much as you expect Elon Musk to give away billions of dollars because he's got billions of dollars to give away, we are expected to be generous and to kind and locked in with the blessings we have received. So what will you do? Will you keep on walking around with your skirt touching the ground? Complaining? Or will you tie that skirt up and get to work? Stand with me, please. Our Heavenly Father, we come before you, and I'm so grateful that you don't just comfort, but that you call us, you exhort us to perspective, to responsibility, and to work, Lord. And the fact that you have given us not just salvation, not just rescue, but that you've given us a role in your kingdom is a huge gift, Lord. And I want to say thank you for all that you've given us, not just grace, which is just unimaginably large blessing, but all the things that you've given us as believers at this point in history, our ability to understand you, to understand the word, to look for ourselves, Lord. The privilege that you've given us is an amazing privilege. And I ask forgiveness, Lord, for the fact that we take that privilege and just use it on ourselves. That our struggle is not getting fired from work, but it's the fear of getting fired. That our struggle is not losing family members because we take a bold stand in our faith, but it's the fear of losing bold family members because of taking a bold stand. That it's not losing community or losing position or losing anything. That we don't lose anything. We're just afraid of losing anything, Lord. And I ask that we would be a church and a people that would gird up, that we would lock in and be set apart for the purpose that you called us to. And that rather than focusing on our complaints, we would focus on the grace that you've given us. Let us be a people who share the blessings that we've received. Let us be a people that carry the weight of the responsibility of our blessings well. And let us be a people who can stand proudly in heaven with the believers who were sawn in half or who lost their homes or who lost their families. Let us be able to stand there proudly with them, not because we were also sawn in half, but because we trusted fully in your grace in whatever situation that we were in. We followed you and took on the burden that you have for us. Help us, forgive us, and lead us closer to you. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.